You rushed to theaters for Hollywood's most glamorous stars. You celebrated their fairy tale weddings in movie magazines. But what if those romances were never real? Behind the Golden Curtain Studios had a secret weapon, the Lavender marriage carefully engineered relationships designed to hide one dangerous truth from the public. Because back then, one whisper could end a career overnight. Today, we're revealing the heartbreaking double lives of the legends you loved. If you grew up watching these icons, comment their name below. During Hollywood's golden era in the 1950s, Rock Hudson embodied everything American moviegoers adored: tall, ruggedly handsome, and effortlessly charming. He was the leading man every woman swooned over. Yet behind that magnetic screen presence, Hudson carefully concealed a truth that could have ended his career overnight. In 1955, with rumors about his homosexuality beginning to circulate in dangerous whispers, Universal Studios moved swiftly to protect its most bankable star. The solution was as cold as it was calculated: a hastily arranged marriage to Phyllis Gates' secretary to Hudson's own powerful agent, Henry Wilson. Hollywood insiders immediately recognized it for what it was: a classic Lavender marriage, a studio-engineered illusion of normalcy. Gates maintained until her dying day that she had married Hudson, genuinely believing herself to be in love. Those who knew the inner workings of Tinseltown remained deeply skeptical. The union lasted barely 3 years before dissolving in divorce in 1958, with Gates citing mental cruelty. The arrangement preserved Hudson's stardom, but at an enormous personal cost. For decades, he performed two entirely different roles: the carefree bachelor on screen and a man forced to love secretly in private. That painful double life collapsed in 1985 when Hudson became the first major American celebrity to publicly announce an AIDS diagnosis. He died that October, aged 59. For older Americans who once lined up eagerly for his matinee showings, this story carries weight far beyond Hollywood gossip. It stands as a quiet, sobering testament to just how cruelly the entertainment industry and society itself could punish those who dared simply to be themselves. In the glittering world of 1930s, Hollywood Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor were as close to royalty as the silver screen could produce. Yet when they wed in May 1939, the whispers around town grew louder than the applause. Taylor MGM's impossibly handsome leading man had long faced quiet but persistent rumors about his attraction to men. Stanwyck, the fiercely self-reliant queen of film noir, raised knowing eyebrows with her conspicuously close bond with Joan Crawford. When gossip about both stars began threatening to boil over, MGM's formidable Louis B. Mayer moved swiftly. He personally orchestrated their wedding, arranging every detail. Taylor himself later recalled that the only contribution he was permitted was, "I do." It was old Hollywood's Lavender marriage playbook, executed with studio precision. Behind their shared front door, however, warmth was in short supply. For roughly 12 years, colleagues described them less as devoted lovers and more as two exceptionally glamorous people tolerating polite coexistence. Their divorce was finalized in February 1951, triggered by Taylor's very public affair with an Italian actress while filming in Rome. He eventually remarried. Stanwyck never did, living quietly among a loyal circle of close female friends. True to the iron code of their generation, both carried their private truths undisclosed until the end. Taylor passing in 1969 at 57, Stanwyck in 1990 at 82. For older Americans who remember buying tickets to their matinees, their story is more than faded studio gossip. It is a quiet, aching reminder of what Hollywood's golden legends sacrificed simply to survive the era they helped define. In the dazzling constellation of 1940s, Hollywood Cary Grant shone brighter than almost anyone, effortlessly witty, impeccably dressed, and possessed of a charm that made both men and women forget how to breathe. Yet when the suave English-born actor married Woolworth heiress Barbara Hutton in July 1942, the press wasted no time sharpening its pencils. Grant had spent years navigating pointed questions about his famously close domestic arrangement with fellow actor Randolph Scott, two handsome bachelors sharing a Santa Monica beach house they cheerfully called Bachelor Hall. apparently unbothered when fan magazines published cozy photographs of them cooking dinner together at home. Hutton, meanwhile, was already a figure of genuine public sympathy. Dubbed the poor little rich girl, she had inherited a staggering fortune from her grandfather, Woolworth founder Frank Winfield Woolworth, yet seemed utterly unable to find happiness. Her second marriage had ended in abuse and humiliation. A union with minimal romantic expectations reportedly held a quiet appeal. The press gleefully nicknamed the couple Cash and Carry, a pun that stung. Grant countered it shrewdly, signing a prenuptial agreement that waived any claim to Hutton's fortune, later insisting that money had never once entered his thinking. The marriage dissolved in 1945, though the two parted as genuine friends, a detail that always struck observers as telling. Grant went on to marry 5 times in total, maintaining his leading man mystique to the very end. Hutton's story grew sadder with each subsequent husband. Grant died in November 1986 at 82. Hutton in 1979 at 66. For older Americans who grew up watching Grant make everything look effortless, his story is a masterclass in navigating an unforgiving era entirely on his own, quietly elegant terms. Among the most gifted and gloriously unconventional couples ever to grace Hollywood, Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester occupy a singular place, not for scandal, but for something rarer, still genuine loyalty in the face of painful truth. Laughton, the Yorkshire-born powerhouse who seized his Academy Award for The Private Life of Henry VIII, was a performer of almost terrifying depth. Yet beneath that commanding screen presence lived a man at war with himself. A strict Catholic upbringing left him racked with guilt over his attraction to men, a burden he once described as his great sorrow. Lanchester, his spirited wife and equal as a performer, is best remembered today as the electrifying hissing bride of Frankenstein. In life, she was something far more complex, a woman who discovered roughly 2 years into their 1929 marriage that her husband was homosexual and who chose with clear eyes to stay. Theirs was never a cold studio arrangement. It was a deeply human compact between 2 brilliant, eccentric people who understood each other in ways few couples ever manage. For 33 years, Lanchester stood steadfastly beside Laughton through his greatest triumphs and his most private struggles, including his long romantic relationships with younger men. Laughton died of kidney cancer on December 15, 1962, at age 63. In 1983, Lanchester published her candid autobiography, laying bare the texture of their remarkable bond with characteristic honesty. She passed away on December 26, 1986, at age 84. For older Americans who remember the sheer force these two brought to every performance, their story asks something quietly profound. What really is a marriage? And can devotion exist beautifully outside its conventional borders? Among Hollywood's most quietly fascinating partnerships, Janet Gaynor and the celebrated costume designer known simply as Adrian stand apart not merely as a Lavender marriage of convenience, but as something richer and more human than that tidy label suggests. Gaynor had already made history long before she and Adrian exchanged vows in August 1939. In 1929, she became the first woman ever to accept the Academy Award for Best Actress. Not for one performance, but for 3 films simultaneously, a feat that remains unrepeated to this day. Off-screen, she moved quietly through a world of intensely close female friendships, her private life largely shielded from public scrutiny. Adrian, meanwhile, was the undisputed architect of MGM glamour, the visionary behind Garbo's silhouettes, Crawford's signature padded shoulders, and the unforgettable ruby slippers of the Wizard of Oz. Within the industry, his preferences were an open secret. Together, they built something unexpectedly genuine. They adopted a son, Robin, in 1940, traveled extensively, and became inseparable companions to Broadway luminaries Mary Martin and her husband Richard Halliday friendships that carried their own quiet whispers. The wit of Hollywood captured it perfectly. Actor Bob Cummings reportedly quipped that Adrian was Gaynor's husband, but Mary Martin was her wife. Their partnership ended abruptly on September 13, 1959, when Adrian died of a stroke at 56. Gaynor later married producer Paul Gregory in 1964 and lived thoughtfully and privately until a devastating 1982 automobile accident set off a long decline. She passed away on September 14, 1984, at 77. For older Americans who remember Gaynor's luminous early films, theirs remains one of Hollywood's most elegantly human stories, two artists who quietly sheltered each other through decades of breathtaking creativity. In the golden machinery of 1940s, MGM few stories shimmer with more complexity or more quiet sadness than the marriage of Judy Garland and Vincente Minnelli. They first crossed paths in 1940, but it was on the luminous set of Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944 that something deeper took hold. Minnelli, a former Broadway art director whose visual imagination was unlike anything Hollywood had previously encountered, had arrived at MGM carrying an open secret from his New York theater years. Garland, already one of the studio's most profitable and most exploited stars, was fragile in ways the public never fully understood, dependent on the pills MGM's own doctors had pressed upon her since adolescence. When they wed in June 1945, the public saw a fairy tale. Those closer to the industry saw something more complicated. Their daughter Liza was born in March 1946. A genuinely cherished child who would go on to eclipse even her extraordinary parents in certain respects, making the Minnellis one of the only families in history where father, mother, and child all won Academy Awards. But the marriage itself was fracturing. By 1948, during the stormy production of The Pirate, the cracks became impossible to paper over. Garland's own torments deepened. The couple separated in 1950 and finalized their divorce in March 1951 after 6 years together. Minnelli went on to marry 3 more times, maintaining the careful discretion that had always defined his private life. He died at his Beverly Hills home on July 25, 1986, at 83. Garland's own story ended far too soon in London in June 1969 at just 47. For older Americans who grew up with Garland's voice as a kind of emotional compass, their story endures as something more than gossip. It is a quiet testament to the breathtaking human cost of an industry that manufactured magic while privately crushing the very people who created it. Long before she cast her imperious eye across every scene of Bewitched, as the wickedly magnificent Endora Agnes Moorehead had already built one of the most formidable careers in the history of American entertainment. A fixture of Orson Welles' Mercury players, she earned 4 Academy Award nominations across a span of more than 2 decades for The Magnificent Ambersons, Mrs. Parkington, Johnny Belinda, and Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, a testament to a range that left her directors and fellow actors perpetually astonished. Her private life was another matter entirely governed by an iron will to remain an enigma. Moorehead married twice, first to actor John Griffith Lee in 1930, a union that quietly ended in divorce in 1952, then to actor Robert Gist in 1954, a marriage that dissolved 4 years later in 1958. Hollywood insiders widely read both arrangements as shields of respectability rather than romances of the heart. Her most devoted bonds by all accounts were with women, and she guarded that truth with a ferocity that bordered on terrifying, threatening legal action against anyone who dared raise the subject in print. Privacy was not merely a preference for Moorehead, it was armor. What softened that armor, at least in private, was friendship. Actress Debbie Reynolds remained among her most cherished companions to the very end, present as Moorehead lay dying. Among Hollywood's most enduring mysteries, Cesar Romero stands in a category entirely his own, not for a scandal he weathered, but for one he simply never allowed to happen. Born in New York City in 1907 to a family of Cuban heritage, Romero arrived in Hollywood carrying natural gifts that would have made any studio head's eyes light up. A towering, graceful frame, a smile of almost unreasonable wattage, and a dancer's ease in his own skin. He worked steadily from his early supporting role in The Thin Man in 1934 through decades of Latin lovers, swashbucklers, and charming rogues before achieving a kind of delirious pop culture immortality as the gleefully cackling white grease-painted Joker in the 1960s Batman television series. The role perfectly suited a man who had always understood that performance was its own kind of armor. What Romero never did across a career spanning nearly 6 decades was marry. In an era when studios routinely engineered lavender marriages as insurance policies against whisper campaigns, Romero took a quieter and arguably more elegant path. He became Hollywood's most celebrated and cheerful confirmed bachelor, appearing on every A-list arm from Joan Crawford's to Ann Sheridan's, to Ginger Rogers flashing that magnificent smile for the cameras and then retreating gracefully into a private life that remained to the end almost entirely his own. Hollywood historians have long speculated about his sexuality. Romero himself simply never addressed the question publicly. The strategy worked with remarkable completeness. No major scandal, no forced confession, no career implosion. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.